Hello and welcome back to PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment. We are in the Q&A session of the Multicam show. Talked about some stuff that you want to do before your Multicam shoot, during your Multicam shoot, and even after your Multicam shoot. So that's what we just talked about. Now we're ready for the Q&A. Let's see if there are any good cues that we can A in here. Let's see here. Daddy MCC opened it up. Sean Mark Dipper saying that he was in the front row. Yes, you were. Oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. Sean Mark Dipper was in the front row for that production. Daddy MCC, what a coincidence. I'm in the middle of a 3-night live Multicam event now. Oh, right on. Done with night 1 and getting ready for night 2. It's a state pageant. Well, hopefully, Daddy MCC, some of this was useful to you. Hopefully, you haven't made any mistakes like I did. And hopefully you've learned something out of this. That'd be awesome. So-called someone is saying that lens rentals will ship to FedEx locations. Okay, that's great. So I had mentioned that borrowlenses.com ships to UPS stores, so lens rentals apparently ships to FedEx locations. That is fantastic. That's really great. It basically turns any UPS store or FedEx store in the country, potentially in the world, I don't know if they do international, into a camera rental location. How insanely cool is that? You can't just walk in and get it, though. You have to get it and order it in advance. But that is incredible to be able to get almost any piece of camera gear delivered to any FedEx or UPS store in the world, or in the country at least. That's awesome. Digging that. So thank you, so-called someone. Appreciate that. In-depth photo and video says, is this a case that you check when you fly, or is that a carry-on size? We talked about it already, but I'll just reiterate it. Yes, this is carry-on size. I certainly can check it. It's a Pelican. I love these things. Very, very strong. But this one is specifically for carry-on size. I have a bigger one that I actually have gotten away with carrying on in business class before, but this one will go economy class. So super. Let's see here. Grony says, best invest for this setup would be an external recorder monitor like the Atmos stuff to stop the hassle with cards, or not. Fair question. Okay, so if you had, I don't have one accessible that I can grab, if you have an external recorder, and incidentally, folks, if you've got questions, get them in there now, because we're getting to the end of what was in there, and I want to make sure I answer your questions. If you have an external recorder, would that obfuscate the need for the memory card, swapping them out, and so on? Sure, if your recorder is big enough. If you're an hour-long show, let me think about this. It's going to be like 150 gigs or so. If you got a bigger than that SSD in there, sure, no problem. So yes, absolutely. But like in my case here, I really didn't need ProRes captures for this. This wasn't, I'm not doing any major color grading or green screening or anything like that. What I'm capturing internally on the camera is more than enough. So I really didn't want to have to deal with hundreds of gigabytes worth of content. So that wasn't of interest to me. But yes, that would have resolved the running out of space issue. For sure. So if it's worth it to you, then absolutely do it. In this situation, it was not worth it to do. Grony's also saying, can you run long HDMI cables to one controller director station? Sure. There's a lot of other ways that you can go about doing this, adding dramatically to the gear in here. You could have a central recording station. You could even do live switching, right? Have everything going into an ATEM like I do for this production. I could take the HDMI output from every camera, convert it to SDI for long runs, run long runs into an ATEM switcher or some other video switcher, and do live switching to record to a final show, or into a multitude of recorders, right? I could have a rack of recorders with SDI coming into each one and just be sitting in one place monitoring everything. Absolutely, that would be fantastic, but you're talking a lot more gear and a lot more setup, a lot more cost. So if that's what the production demands, or if you just happen to have that and that's what you're gonna do, awesome. Definitely a great way to go. That was beyond the scope of this shoot, but you certainly could do that. So-called someone says, when I do multicam shoots, always have my largest cards on the wide shot with the mindset of switching batteries or cards. I can always switch to the wide or left. There you go. Ricardo says, what would you have done if it was a live show? If it was a live show, then I wouldn't have had to worry about the recording. So like this live show, I don't record ISOs, right? Every camera is not recorded separately. The recording of this show is one file, one final piece that is recording what you're seeing. So as I'm switching angles, as I go to my close-up, as I go to my overhead shot, that is what's getting recorded. If I make a mistake in my switching, I can't cut to another angle in post. I'm not set up for that. I would love to be set up for that, but that would require basically the setup I was just talking about, a series of recorders, an individual recorder for each camera, or going into each camera and hitting record before the show and then syncing. That's way too much work. Blackmagic does make recorders. Believe me, all the money in the world, I would love to have a setup where every single camera goes into its individual recorder, and then from there it passes through and goes to the ATEM switcher. So I have my live show that I'm switching just like I do, but I have a backup recording of every channel, every source individually. That'd be awesome. That'd be a lot of money. Not quite there yet. So anyway, so that's, if I had a live show, I would have basically done it just like this. And we talked about it. We actually talked about, with Panasonic, about doing it as a live production, but we realized that for the amount of extra work that it would have been, it didn't provide the benefit. Getting the uploaded video up the next day was fine. It's not the kind of thing that had to be live. Oh, which incidentally, I never talked about that. The video, I'll link to it down below. The actual video that we did, it's up on Panasonic's YouTube channel right now. And we'll link to that down below. Okay, anything else? No other questions coming up. Well, that was easy. That was a short Q&A, which is fine because that was a long show. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in today. That was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two. That was a fun one to put together and share my experience and what I learned and the mistake that I made. We don't like talking about that part of it. But in the end, it turned out fine. It is what it is. All right, folks, thanks so much for tuning in today. Have yourselves a fabulous weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.